What is the most surprising thing people don't know about home water usage?
That it adds up very quickly. 5 to 7,000 gallons a month non-irrigation in the wintertime versus 8,000 gallons in one irrigation cycle. A shower head will use between 2 and 2.5 gallons per minute, and a sprinkler system is going to use about 15. I'm not anti-lawn. I'm not anti-irrigation system. I am pro-information and staying on top of it.
What's up, College Station? I'm Grace Hollowell, and today I'm joined by Jennifer Nations, our Water Services Coordinator. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, I'm excited you're here. You brought some fun stuff with you today that we will get into shortly. And we've had you on the show before, but I think this is the first time that you've been here since we've had the new setup. So welcome back.
I like it.
Yes. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do for those who may not be familiar.
So, jokingly, I tell people that I get paid to tell people to drink the tap water, don't flush anything other than the 3 Ps, and turn their sprinklers off. If I want to be professional and mature about it, I say that I handle outreach and communications for the water utility.
Gotcha. So what is one thing that you wish more people knew about the area of water services?
I think a lot of people don't really, it's just there, right?
Yeah.
You just turn off on the tap and it's there. You flush the toilet and it's there. But water utilities, and I'm speaking, about College Station Water Services, but also about the industry in general, they're really pillars of the community. And I pulled that from Kelly Deering-Smith with Louisville Water. But if we don't have a good, reliable water and wastewater system, then we don't have all of the other nice things that we want to have, the parks, the economic development, the industry. The Texas Water Foundation has this campaign of Texas runs on water, and we've started to say the Brazos Valley runs on water, too.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you don't necessarily think about until there's a problem where you don't have water or something like that. Something is wrong with your water because, like you said, it's always there. It's always present.
Yeah.
Going off of that question, a misconception that people have about water in College Station.
I think some people may default to just thinking that their tap water is unsafe because there's a lot of messaging all around the community about, people say, well, what about Flint? And did you hear about this? And that environmental group came out with their annual report that has all of these things in it. But we live here. We work here. We're raising our families here. We're drinking the water, too.
Yes.
So we know how important it is to put out a reliable, high-quality water product. So I would like people to know that. But then also know that they can reach out to their utility, and if there is something that is unpleasing about their water, or if they have questions about their water, we're here to answer their questions.
Yes, absolutely. And I know I grew up in a town where our water services it was redistributed from the lake. So the lake was always there, and a lot of people had a misconception that, the water's dirty because the lake is dirty and there's all those fish in there.
Right.
But that wasn't the case. It's treated, and we have water treatment facilities that our employees here do a very good job of checking and making sure it is safe for everyone.
Yeah, they have to go to school and get licenses and keep their licenses up. And when we get over a certain population size, then we have to have operators with even higher licenses. And depending on how our operations go, we've got to have like an A water license is almost the equivalent of getting a college degree, just because you have to take so many classes to get it and sit for a really difficult exam. So, yeah.
So what is your favorite thing about what you do? I know you're very passionate about water.
Yeah.
Whenever I see you have some sort of water jewelry.
I've got my water bear earrings on today.
So what is your favorite thing about your job?
I think my favorite thing is getting people's minds changed. And sometimes that's a tough nut to crack, but when I can find somebody in the community who finds me at an event later and they say, oh, Jennifer, I think about water differently because of when we went to the wastewater treatment plant for a tour, or, oh, Citizens University answered so many questions that I didn't even know I have. I really like doing that because then I hope that I have a water ambassador in the community who's then going to go and tell their friends and kind of raise awareness about the importance of water, wastewater, water conservation, the whole thing.
Yes, we had Lori Brown on last week talking about some nature conservation and plants for our monarch population here. And a lot of what you do is in a similar vein, but for water. Because water is one of those resources that we have that is not infinite. We don't have an unlimited supply.
Right.
So conservation is very, very important. So how does what you do impact our community?
Many years ago, the American Water Works Association had this Only Tap Water Delivers campaign. So let me see if I can remember that. Only Tap Water Delivers fire protection, public health protection, economic support for the economy, and the quality of life that we all enjoy. Like, tap water, not bottled water, tap water provides all of that. And one thing I think people really don't understand is definitely the fire protection bit.
Right.
We've got to keep our towers full in the summer and maintain water pressure so that we can fight fires.
Yes. And especially in the Texas summer, sometimes those water restrictions that may have to be put into place can seem inconvenient.
Right.
But like you said, if you think about it a little differently and think about how much we need to keep our community safe, it kind of makes a little more sense that way.
Yeah.
So what is your favorite spring memory in College Station? I know we were chatting a little bit before. It's a busy weekend coming up. Easter's coming up. What do you think of when you think spring in College Station?
Okay, so I really love this question because when I first moved here, it was summer and it was hotter than I had ever experienced.
Yes.
And I was away from family for the first time, didn't really have a good social network. So there were a few months where, and I didn't have a good job yet, so there were a few months where I was pretty down in the dumps. Then I watched this miniseries called True Women that was about some early women settlers of Texas. I discovered Washington on the Brazos, and then I saw all the bluebonnets, and I was like, well, I'm sold.
Yeah.
This place is amazing.
Yes. I moved here in the fall and I was like, this is great. It's still in the 70s and 80s in the fall. And then summer hit and I was like, oh boy, what happened? And then when I finally got to experience my first spring here, again, like you said, the bluebonnets, I was just blown away.
I had never seen anything like that.
Yes, and especially just driving anywhere, it makes the drive a little more enjoyable, just looking out and seeing how pretty they are along the highways. So what is something that most people don't know about you?
Let's see. Here's a good one that's completely random. But I met Snow White at Disneyland in California when I was, I don't know, probably 3 or 4, and my mom tells me that Snow White walked up, and I was like, life goals achieved right there at that early age, and she took me by the hand, and we walked around for a little bit. Like my mom just let me, walk, but it was Snow White, so it was fine. Right? Yeah. So yeah, I've met Snow White, and I've been a fan ever since.
Awesome. I am a big Disney person. I actually have a trip planned coming up soon, and I felt that way the first time I met Mickey in real life. It's a magical experience.
Yeah, it's really fun.
So as we head into spring, what should our residents know before turning their irrigation systems back on?
Well, if they're not signed up for free weekly watering recommendations from BV WaterSmart, get on that right away. It has a new website address, bvwatersmart.org. Very easy to remember now. But that is a service with the local water utilities and the Brazos Valley Groundwater Conservation District. We've got rain gauges, digital rain gauges all around town, and they will measure rainfall at a neighborhood level, and then we know that evapotranspiration pretty much stays the same, and evapotranspiration is basically plant sweat.
Yes.
It's what the water they lose to evaporation and transpiration. So that's going to stay pretty constant throughout the county. But rainfall, Raintree is going to get 1.5 inches of rainfall, and then maybe Creek Meadows doesn't get hardly anything. So because rainfall varies, we're going to measure rainfall in those rain gauges, and then you'll get an email on Monday morning saying, hey, like this week it said, we need to water this week, which is pretty early in the season, but it's been hot and dry. And then it'll tell you how long to run each sprinkler based on what type it is. So.
And what are the most common mistakes that people make with irrigation this time of year?
Probably just going full on, like as soon as they turn their sprinklers on, they're watering like it's July.
Yeah.
And we don't have those irrigation demands yet. It's 90 degrees in March is a bit on the outside of normal, but generally we can usually get by with watering once a week, maybe once every other week, because we'll get a little bit of intermittent rainfall between March, April, and May. and then we don't really need to go into full automatic mode until June. So they water 3-4 times a week. They'll water at the wrong time of day, like the middle of the day. They'll water even if it rains. They don't turn their sprinkler systems off. So too long, too often, not when it's needed.
And how often should you actually be watering in the springtime?
In the springtime, usually just once a week if it needs it.
Yes.
Yeah, not this 4 days a week that we're seeing already.
Right, and it's not like a one-size-fits-all scenario.
Right, yeah. It's going to depend on, what type of plant material you have, how much shade you have, what the health of your soil is. That makes a big difference, yeah.
Can you explain how weather conditions like rainfall and the temperature, I know it's been warmer than we anticipate, or I know it's been warmer than typical for March. How does that impact the watering schedules?
We definitely see an association. It's not necessarily correlation equals causation, but when we see the triple-digit temperatures, that tracks with increased water demand. And you may need to irrigate once or twice a week, irrigate a little bit more, but when the temperatures get higher, temperature has even more of an impact, or more of a association than even rainfall. Like we'll get rainfall and water demand will drop back some, but when we get the really high temperatures, then we really see the water demand start to ramp up.
And with that, the cycle and soak method, I know there's different ways that you can irrigate your lawn. Why is the cycle and soak method so important?
So when you think about it, our soils here in College Station and really throughout most parts of the county, they're really heavy clay. And when that heavy clay dries out, it's kind of like, think about a kitchen sponge. When it gets dried out and it's really crusty and hard, if you pour a little bit of water on that sponge, it's going to slowly expand as the water goes all through that sponge. So the soil is kind of like that too. So cycle and soak, and I'll just go ahead and use one of my props here.
Yes.
Irrigation controllers will typically have different, they'll have start times on here. And so instead of running a rotor zone, which is like the big ones that go back and forth, instead of running that for 30 or 40 minutes straight, that's kind of like your lawn is drinking through a fire hose. So we'll divide that total runtime into 3 or more start times. The first pass gets the soil a little bit wet. The next pass, the water soaks in a little bit more. And then by the end of your irrigation cycle, you've thoroughly wet the soil profile without too much runoff.
Yes, and that is something, this looks very similar to the one at my house. And I'm sure every system is a little different, but the general premise of it are the same. And if you have questions and you live in College Station, Water Services offers irrigation checkups, correct?
Yep.
So what does that entail for people who might have questions about their irrigation system?
Sure. So it takes about 30 to 45 minutes to complete. I need either the homeowner or some authorized representative, somebody who can walk around with me. I'm going to need access to the front yard, the backyard, and the irrigation controller. But at the end of the checkup, they'll have a written report documenting, this is how long you're running your zones for this right now. This is how many days you're watering this right now. This is what we suggest your irrigation schedule to be. Here's the locations of your broken sprinkler heads, or you could get away with different plant material over here that might use less water. You have turf in the shade that needs less water over here. There'll be a bunch of recommendations on there.
Yes, and I know it is very helpful for people like me who had never had a irrigation system before moving here. I'm from up north, and that's not something that is always needed up there with the weather. So I was completely lost when I first moved here. And to clarify, this irrigation checkup is just that. It's a checkup.
Yeah.
Y'all cannot do repairs.
Correct.
But you do make recommendations on what you think should be repaired if there is a problem.
And if, I can send people to websites for little DIY repairs if they need their system fixed. Any repairs done on the irrigation system need to be done by a licensed irrigator or a licensed plumber, a properly trained and licensed individual. If you are going out, if you're hiring someone who's a yard man or handyman and they don't have that licensing behind them, that's not for the customer, but for the person doing the work, that's a Class C misdemeanor. because irrigation
Okay.
systems are connected to the public water system. So it's
Yes.
really important that we have people who know what they're doing
Yes.
working on them.
Yes, very, very important. And are there signs that people can look for that their lawn is being overwatered?
Yeah, it being overwatered, you might see like some different plant material come up in the lawn, some plant, some weeds that maybe thrive in a wetter environment. You might see algae on the sidewalk. You might see, and just, soggy, not good. The lawn will not be in good health. On the flip side of that, you will notice that your lawn does need water if you walk across it and you leave footprints, and the grass blades will start to be a little bit grayish blue, or not quite bright green, and they'll start to look kind of crispy. And so if you see that, then that's a sign that it does need water.
Yes, and with most systems, I know mine has a built-in rain sensor, and I believe you
Yeah.
have one here. How does that work?
So this would be hooked up to the gutters. You want to have it somewhere where it's unobstructed and the rain can easily access it. We have seen them like under fences or under a tree. If the rain can't get to it, it's not going to properly measure the rain. So
Right.
it's usually going to be on the gutter somewhere near the controller. Let's say the controller is on an inside garage wall. The rain sensor is usually going to be on the gutter right on the outside of that. But that's up high. You can't really see if it's working right. So then you're going to have, this is just one brand. There's other brands. And this particular one works with multiple different models. But you'll have a green up here. It'll note if the sensor is bypassed, or if the sensor is dry, it'll be green. So green means go, you need to water. And then if it's wet, it doesn't need water, stop. And what the rain sensor does is it sends a signal to the controller that kind of interrupts the next cycle. And they're not foolproof. Like if we get
Right.
2 inches of rain or something, if that dries out faster than the soil, then it may tell your sprinkler system to irrigate again before you need it. But we've got 2 other tools that we can use for that. We can use, I don't have a rainfall tube in here, but this is a rain gauge that it'll measure rain. So keep a couple of these, maybe keep one in the front yard and the backyard, see if you get different rainfall there. Check that. If you get an inch or more in the rain gauge, then you can give your sprinklers a break for a week. And then also use our little soil moisture sensors. And after you irrigate, it should be over in the wet area. Before you irrigate, it should be in the dry. And if it's moist, then you can probably wait to irrigate for a little bit.
Awesome. And that one has a cute little frog on
Yeah,
it
cute
to
little
make
froggy.
it.
So what we really want you to do is put it in the ground and take it out using this little copper tubing here.
Yes.
If you put it in using this part, you'll decapitate Froggy.
Oh, no.
Ask me how I know. It comes detached and it's really hard to put back together. And it's, it just says dry, moist, wet. So it's not like a scientific measuring tool, but it's good enough to tell you, did your system put out enough water? Because you might have some areas that after you irrigate, they still look dry. So check this. Or did you get enough rain and your soil is still wet? Do that too.
Yes, and switching gears here to some water conservation tips. What are some simple ways that residents can start saving water throughout their homes?
Throughout their homes, start with find your water meter and learn how to read it and
Yeah.
look for the leak indicator. There will be a little plus sign on the meter or a little red dial that's moving. And if you're not using water at all, it should not be moving. Occasionally, if you have the refrigerator ice maker, that may register quickly on the meter. But read the meter, know what your normal usage, read your bill, and then if you have a randomly high water bill, you might want to check your toilet for leaks.
Yes.
Those have been known to use thousands and thousands of gallons of water for leaks. And
Sneakily, that you wouldn't
Yes.
even know.
no, you might not. I mean, if you're looking at it, you might be able to see a little bit of water movement, but a lot of times people just don't know. And then, just look for leaks around the home. Sometimes the tub faucet will leak. That's or sometimes you'll have a little faucet leak. And maybe it's just leaking a little bit here and there, but those leaks really do add up.
Yes, I had an issue where there was a leak. It was actually in our irrigation system, but we didn't know that. And I got a call from Water Services saying, hey, hey, we're noticing that you're putting out quite a bit of water. And my first thought was, did my cat turn the faucet on? Like, what is going on? But again, like I said, I was unfamiliar with the irrigation
Right.
system, and there was a leak that I didn't know about. But yes, that taught me to learn how to read my meter because I did not know what I was looking at and how to read it. So yes, that reading your meter is very important.
Yeah.
So how can the average household save water by adjusting their irrigation habits? I know we talked about it a little bit, but what are some more ways?
Well, if you think about it, in the non-irrigation months, a single-family residence might use between 5,000 and 7,000 gallons of water over the whole billing cycle. Some irrigation systems will use that much in one cycle.
Wow.
So if you have a Monday, Wednesday, Friday irrigation schedule, you might be using 21,000 gallons of water in a week.
Wow.
So definitely look at how long you're running your system and how often you're running your system. Read the meter before and after you run an irrigation cycle so you get an idea of how much you're using. They typically, what I see in my irrigation checkups is I'll see an average flow rate of like 13 to 15 gallons per minute. If I see something approaching 20 gallons a minute, I'm going to start wondering if there's a leak somewhere. And if you can cut back one or two irrigation cycles, and especially if you're doing the cycle and soak method of irrigation, then the irrigation water is going to get further down into the soil profile, so your plants are going to dry out slower, so you'll need to water less often. So that's a good way to save water.
So, and what are some indoor water saving tips that people tend to overlook?
Probably, well, I would say long showers, but as I'm raising teens and preteens, they're just I do get after them about that. I don't do the long showers. I'm in and out and done. But that either wash your dishes and clothes on only when you have a full load, or if you have a device, an appliance that can sense how much you load in there, do that. If you're doing any kind of hand watering around the house, set a timer on the microwave or your phone or something so that you don't forget and leave it going. So that, people will, sometimes they'll do the foundation watering with the soaker hoses around the foundation and they forget, or if they're filling their pool with a hose or something and they might forget because you just, if you're not looking at it, you're not going to see it right away.
Right.
Yeah.
And now switching gears a little bit here, how does water usage in our community typically change during the spring and summer months?
So in the spring months, it'll start to ramp up. In the summer months, it really ramps up. And then in the late summer months, we get another bump because we get thousands of our new friends moving in. So back in 2023, when we had like a string of triple-digit days and water demand was really, really high, we were kind of making it, but when the students came back, then we really had record high demand.
Yeah.
And I think people were just kind of like, I've got to irrigate my grass. And so we got very close to our production capacity. So we initiated water restrictions, like a mandatory watering schedule. And that was kind of bumpy because we'd never had to do that before.
Right.
And some people thought it wasn't fair and some people wondered how to comply with it. But the point was just like, if you're watering 4 days a week now, drop back to 2. If you can't do that, drop back to 3 and, know that this is not going to go on forever. Your landscape is not going to die. And people were concerned about what if their HOA comes after them? But if we get up to capacity and we can't fill the towers overnight, then we run the risk of losing water pressure, which happened to water utilities around Texas in the year prior to that. So we had to do that watering schedule that year.
Yes, and when you think about it, I know it's hard to it's easy to stay in your bubble and only think about you and your needs, but we are a community here.
We are.
So using that community effort when things like that happen is very, very important. And are there any programs or rebates or resources available to help our residents conserve water?
Yes. In addition to the irrigation checkup and the free items like the moisture meter and the rain gauge, if you upgrade to a WaterSense labeled irrigation controller, this one is just an example, but there's a bunch of different WaterSense labeled irrigation controllers. If you upgrade to efficient sprinkler nozzles, if you upgrade to pressure regulating sprinkler bodies, like if your irrigation system has too much water pressure, it's going to put the water out in like a fog, and so it's just going to mist. You'll put your turn your sprinklers on, watch the water come out, and just blow away to the neighbor's lawn.
Yes.
So the pressure regulating sprinkler bodies really do a good job of applying the water just to the green stuff, not to anything else. So you can get a 50% credit on your bill for that.
Awesome. And if residents have questions about their water or want to stay informed about watering, where can they go to find out more?
Just go to cstx.gov/water, and that'll take you to the Water Services website. They can also just call me, 764-6223, and I'll answer.
Yes, and cstx.gov/water has a bunch of different water resources. The drinking water quality report is on there. There's a bunch of different infographics and things to read through. So if you're ever curious about our water here, definitely check that out.
And a couple of non-city websites, but I pull information from them, is the EPA's WaterSense website. It's epa.gov/WaterSense, all one word. And then also the Water Conservation Advisory Council for Texas, and that's another easy one, savetexaswater.org.
Yes, awesome. So before we wrap up, let's have a little fun with some water conservation lightning round questions. Are you ready?
Sure.
What is one water-saving habit you wish everyone would adopt?
Well, everyone can do this. Turn the water off when you brush your teeth or when you're shaving or something. Your face is not going to get cleaner. Your teeth are not going to get whiter if that water's just running. And that's easy. We have 30-something thousand connections in town. And so if we had that times however many people are in your household brushing their teeth, we could get some savings there.
Yeah, that's a good one. If you could bust one myth about lawn care or watering, what would it be?
That if you don't water your grass every single day, it's going to die.
Okay. What is the most surprising thing people don't know about home water usage?
That it adds up very quickly. 5,000 to 7,000 gallons a month non-irrigation in the wintertime versus 8,000 gallons in one irrigation cycle. A shower head will use between 2 and 2.5 gallons per minute, and a sprinkler system is going to use about 15. I'm not anti-lawn. I'm not anti-irrigation system. I am pro-information and staying on top of it.
Yes. Would you rather give up long showers or green lawns, and why?
I might contradict myself saying that I'm not anti-lawn, but one of the principles of Xeriscape is having practical turf areas.
Yes.
So a lot of you areas are getting away from non-functional turf. So if you have a green lawn where the kids are playing football in the evenings or tossing the Frisbee around with their dog, great, use that. But if you have a piece of turf that is just, you're not enjoying it other than just going out and mowing it and fertilizing it, and it's not giving you enjoyment, you could give that up and put in some native plants and maybe make a butterfly garden or something.
Yes.
And you can, I know my own children will disagree with me, but you can get cleaned and washed head to toe in about 5 minutes.
Yes, yes. So. And finally, what is your go-to quick tip for someone who wants to make an immediate impact?
Goodness. Find out where your water comes from and learn more about it.
Yes. Good answer.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Jennifer. And that's what's up.